on my end for DHS before I do that. That's why I haven't done any outside interviews.
Okay.
I'm kind of under some strict restraints. And also, you know, I'll tell you, man, as much as I interview all these experts, I don't consider myself an expert.
Hey, what's up, everybody? So, hey, I've shot a couple videos over the last couple days, and I've launched my stupid little, I'm not going to say stupid, it's very important in the way that we're going to. Hey, what's up, everybody? So, hey, been, hope you can see me. Been taking some notes. I do business here. I launched a quality management system yesterday.
You have a contingency of American special operators show up in the hillside somewhere in Mexico, and you engage with these people. In the American mindset, you are eliminating a threat to national security. You're eliminating cartel terrorism. You're eliminating the bad guys.
Jeremy! And it's important because it dictates the way things get done around here in terms of process control, standardized work instructions, and the like. And a few days ago I showed you guys a little bit of a sneak peek at my Gephi project and my database. But basically, I was looking into how I could make the database I'm building even better. And one of the quickest ways to do that is to make it available to external audits. In conjunction with that, it's necessary to have a quality management system. And without getting too far off track, I've put forth a protocol on how I'm going to start covering subjects going forward. For example, earlier today, you know what, let me just get this first. A lot of you guys know I've done many videos over the last year and a half, with major platforms. And during this time, some of these platforms have had me on more than once, specifically Camp Canyon, and then other ones haven't. And a lot of that is due to the way that I have traditionally told my side of things or whatnot, and I have a looping way of talking sometimes, and I need to make sure that I stick to the point. Get a subject, go with it, whatnot. And so I've been practicing that over the last year and a half. And if you do anything enough, sooner or later, you're going to get better at it than you were. You might not ever be great, but you'll get better at it. And I have been improving over time. I don't cuss as much. I do stick with the point a lot more than I used to. I don't pick up my water bottle 15 times without taking a drink, like I did on Ian Bix. And you watch a lot of the way that you do a lot of things. One of the things that I'm very good at, that I'm very detailed and meticulous in, is my attention to detail on certain things, which allows me, in combination with my experience in Mexico, my first-hand experience in Mexico, to realize when something isn't quite right with things which I am keenly familiar with. And so that brings me to my point right now. When I've been out there and I've come across a lot of these YouTube shows.
This is how my employees clock in today.
This little thing has helped my business save tens of thousands of dollars.
Remember how we used to clock in?
Yeah, but what they were buying is absolutely terrifying. Because, as we all know, the Mexican cartels don't need to go to Europe to buy guns, right? The supply of weapons from the US is continuous. But here, they were looking to buy machine guns, they were looking to buy RPG launchers, they were looking to buy mortar, they were looking to buy ammunition for very, very heavy weaponry.
The opinions of the guests and hosts are their own and do not represent the opinions of Ironclad, the Border Patrol, or the Department of Homeland Security.
Welcome to Borderland Narcosis, an Ironclad original presented by First Form. Go get your First Form supplements at firstform.com/borderland. My next guest is Chris Dalby. We've had him on before. He's a very experienced journalist and today he brings us some information about the cartel working in Europe. Chris, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us again. I always try and do this just in case it's been a while since you've been here. Do you mind giving the audience just a quick kind of background of who you are and your experience in the journalism space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Chris Dolby. I've been an organised crime journalist for about 15 years now. I run a publishing company called World of Crime. We have a bunch of different things. We have books on organised crime. We have the World of Crime newsletter.
EVE Online is a
Already an ad.
universe.
For you sports fans out there, we have the Sports and Crime Briefing, where if you want to know everything about the way in which organised crime is taking over your favourite sport from local to international, we've got you covered. And in November, we're launching our Age of Cartels podcast. So we've got stuff for you now, and we've got stuff for you down the road.
Awesome. I love it, man. There's some interesting new stuff that's happening across.
So look, to be clear, I don't have an axe to grind with anybody making a living. And sticking to the point, during the last year and a half, and even longer than that, I have long emailed the Sean Ryan Show, Joe Rogan, etc., the entire list of anybody that has anything remotely cartel related. I have 100%, almost certainly been in contact with them, not just once, but numerous times. And when you start doing these interviews, you start wondering, are these people working for the government? Do they have ulterior motives? Is there a hidden agenda, etc., etc.? And after you expose yourself to them enough, you start paying attention to their backgrounds and the inner workings amongst themselves, and you start coming up with some common threads, which is what Gephi and MySQL and social network analysis is great at uncovering, is the links between these people. And as I just stated, I've shown you a little bit of what I've got going on that. My channel is not about me. It never has been. My channel is about challenging people that aren't necessarily being truthful with what they represent. And I'm not saying that's the state with Ironclad. I'm not saying that's what's going on at all. Everything they say may be true, may not. What's going to dictate that is the evidence and whether or not it's been verified or not. As far as Vincent Rocco Vargas goes, I had contacted Ironclad on several different occasions, calling them, leaving messages going back a year and a half at least. And unfortunately, I don't have the data log on my phones right now. I could potentially pull that and put that into data also, giving the computer files I have hashes, so they're unique identifiers to make sure that nothing has been altered or changed. Becoming more sophisticated in the way that I archive material, etc. So in this case, you're kind of going to just have to take me at my word that I have. No, actually you don't. I've got emails going back that prove this too. So I've contacted these people for a long time, and they've always blown me off continually, which is crazy, being that I can definitely 1,000% prove I am who I am and did what I said I did in Mexico. And I wouldn't be this overt about it if I was making any of that up, because potentially I could be lying to a federal agent, which is in itself is a crime. So they've blown me off, and then they didn't start paying attention to me until I told them that I was building an OSINT, or an open source intelligence database. At that juncture, not Ironclad, not Jeremy Carey, but Vincent Rocco Vargas got back to me and gave me 5 minutes of his time. And I'm not going to be producing material as much here in the near future, because I've got a flow chart that I have to follow now, and I need to be a lot more detailed in my record keeping because of the way that people that could have been open have not been historically. Vincent Vargas has told me via text message that Pierre Rossini was vetted by him because Pierre Rossini did tech work. That was the response from Vince in my phone. I've got it right now. Which was odd to me that Pierre Rossini would be sitting there on Ironclad representing all things cartel, and then he's since broke off and he's been attached to Matthew Cox. He's been broken off and gone into another true crime genre, and good for him. You know what? I don't have any qualms with people making a living. Just be honest. You'll see these things come down the pipe. Calling Ironclad as many times as I have, and I've got several of the phone calls recorded, they've blown me off routinely. The only correspondence I have with Ironclad on an official level is Jesse Carey and Bruno Vallela getting back to me via email regarding the cartel-controlled rehab stories when I had re-interviewed Marco Rivera of Enfermeros Tácticos, tactical nurses in Tijuana, refuting whether or not that rehab in the Ironclad story was in fact cartel-controlled. Come to find out that the mayors support the cartel-controlled rehab with tanks of gasoline in a donated car, and it's very above board. And what is supposed to, or what is portrayed as kidnapping, is actually involuntary commission to a sanatorio or a rehab to get people better, which is exactly what goes on here in the United States too. There's nothing criminal or nefarious about it. It's what it is. And that their gang members are people that were in that rehab working. The people could come and go from that rehab, and there's no proof or substantiation or support evidence whatever that cartel rehab is in any way, shape, or form run by a cartel. Okay? Let's fast forward. I've left several different messages at Ironclad and for Jeremy Carey and his team on many occasions. 2 days ago, I called in again, recorded the phone call. I'm going to leave it for you here. We're going to put it in this video. Today, I got a phone call back from the CEO of Ironclad, and I wanted to record it, except Samsung does not allow you to use your on-screen recorder for recording phone calls due to two-party states that require two-party consent. Jeremy's not in a two-party consent state, and neither am I, so I could have legally recorded the phone call. However, that being the case, and usually I use one of my other phones to record the phone call, I do want to put this forth because I do want to give people the right to reply before I go out and issue a story on them. And I am going to say that it is interesting to me that cartel news is being brought to you by people like Chris Dalby. I think the other gentleman's named Sam Cook in Canada, Katarina Schultz in Canada. But when you have someone, and Ed Calderon, I am sitting here with FOIA request to find out whether or not Ed Calderon was in fact trained in Coronado by the Department of the Navy Criminal Investigative Services, or anything. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. Or whether or not Ed Calderon has in fact at any level, he or his companies that he represents, which are approved vendors to the United States government in terms of instruction and merchandise. In what capacity he's worked with the FBI or the United States Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, BORTAC, or anything else, because it is odd to me that he would be on shows with all these different people and they will talk about any number of things except where they've actually trained together. Vincent Vargas himself being affiliated or has been affiliated with the Department of Homeland Security and potentially BORTAC. When Ed's on there, they don't speak about BORTAC. When Ed and Sean Ryan are together, they don't speak about Coronado or whatnot. And when you look up the dates on the classes that Sean's been to Bud's, either one of the two classes, and the timelines between anything, or Taylor Kavanaugh, if it coincides, if they were at Coronado at the same time, all the details behind what you're being told. I have to be fair to these people, which is why I have launched a quality management system. To be clear, today you guys are stuck with my notes because Samsung doesn't want to be held legally accountable for recording someone in a two-party consent state, and it's shut off. I will put the screenshot in here. Today I did speak with Jeremy Carey, and I'm going to give him an email, but the notes of that call were, Jeremy Carey called me today at 11:21 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I called back immediately at 11:22 a.m. because I was sitting there trying to get my on-screen recorder to work. which I did. However, it did not record the call. Samsung disables recording applications when the phone call is active because of two-party consent state laws. It was a 5-minute plus conversation with Jeremy Carey, and it was nice. It was pretty straightforward. We've discussed repeated attempts at communication, which I have done with his company on several occasions, reached out to them trying to figure out if there's a way to communicate with the people that are making these stories and answer some or alleviate some of the concerns that I have with their stories. Not that everything that they do is bad. It's not, to be clear. However, when there are glaring holes or inconsistencies, they do need to be addressed. I told Jeremy Carey my official position in Mexico for the agency that I work for and for the general that I work for. I also spoke to him about the corrections on the cartel rehab with Marco Rivera, and then negating the cartel control, which is to say Marco Rivera himself flatly negated. And if you guys are interested, I have the video. I've uploaded the phone call. You guys can listen to it to yourself and hear what he has to say, and then go. I encourage you to go to Ironclad's channel and go look at their cartel controlled rehab, and you can connect the dots yourself. I don't want to do every single thing, but, well, actually I've already mentioned a lot of this. My major question was, and the phone call ended with this. In fact, let me grab my other phone. I want to get some more notes. Basically, from Jeremy Carey, I'm sending him an email tomorrow with several questions in it. And before I upload this video, I will put the exact email in there so people can see what is being asked. But my major question to Jeremy Carey and the crew over at Ironclad is how it is they vet their guests. Because I told Jeremy Carey today, and I made it very clear, that when I'm looking for Freedom of Information Act request on Ed Calderon and all things Ed Calderon in conjunction with what the training that went on at Coronado was, any other training that's gone on for the Department of Defense or the United States Navy, how and when they trained any Mexican state police forces in the United States, and what capacity. I'm looking for that. I'm looking for the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security to answer whether or not Ed has ever been contracted as an instructor, and if so, when and where, specifically at the FBI Academy and the United States Secret Service Academy, per Ed's bio and own words. Much of which has been recorded on videos in his own words on several of the snippets that I've entered into the videos that I have. I would like to know Ironclad's vetting process. I'm not going to make a great big video today. I'm going to keep this brief. Actually, you know what? I can read this right now to you. Jeremy, thank you for the call today. As you asked, here are the points in writing. Each is a claim or a question, with the record I am relying on. For each item, please indicate whether Ironclad A, independently verified it, and on what records. B, relied on materials or representations supplied by the individual. Or C, did not verify it. Corrections supported by my records will change how each item is graded and published. The call record, you called me today at 11:21 Pacific Standard Time, and I'll enter the date. Return the call at 11:22 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, approximately 5+ minutes. Please correct this summary if your recollection differs. 1. Vetting process. Please describe what constitutes vetting at Ironclad for an individual's biography or credentials, who performs it, and what primary records are ordinarily sought. If the standard differs by individual, please say how. Number 2, Ed Calderon. My searches of SAM.gov, USAspending.gov, and the Foreign Military Training Report for the fiscal years 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012, specifically to coincide with Ed Calderon's stated claim on Jack Carr of 2010 to 2011 time frame, to make sure that we don't miss any year. Located no record of Mr. Calderon in the capacity searched regarding whether or not Coronado or United States Naval Special Warfare, Navy SEALs, or NCIS had in any way done any training with foreigners at all, of which Mexican Secretaría de Seguridad Pública is present in other places in that log, so I'm definitely searching the appropriate log. However, Baja California State Police are not in there. And also, additionally, with the Merida Initiative, the DEA did choose to train people in Mexico or potentially even here, but they went with federal level counterparts, of which Ed was not privy to. So, back to this email. I do not treat that as absence by itself as proof that claimed training or instruction did not occur. I'm asking what Ironclad relied on in terms of vetting Ed Calderon. Please identify the records or sources used to verify his claimed military or federal training, law enforcement background, and professional credentials. As discussed on the call, I'm also seeking official records on two questions. Whether Mr. Calderon received training at Naval Base Coronado and or Jamul or Jamul, however you want to pronounce it, California, where Skydive San Diego is, during the fiscal years 2010 to 2012 specifically, from the Department of the Navy, the Department of State, Naval Special Warfare, or NCIS, and whether Mr. Calderon or the business entities registered to him with the Kentucky Secretary of State, and I have a list of the names, has served in an official instructor capacity of the FBI, the U.S. Secret Service, BORTAC, or U.S. military personnel from 2010 to the present, as stated in his published biography on IMBD or even on Ed's Manifesto. Those requests stand independently of this correspondence, meaning regardless of what Jeremy Carey tells me in Ironclad, I am going to continue pursuing Freedom of Information Act requests to figure out whether or not Ed Calderon is who he claims to be. And the reason why I'm doing that, it's not an axe to grind with Ed. I hope Ed is every bit the person that he's portrayed himself to be. In fact, I trust that he probably is. I'm just saying that we need to see the receipts. I've shown mine, and other people should show theirs. Around the board. No deity worship, no, you were a special operator, none of this stuff. We all put our cards on the table, and they are what they are. To continue with this email, number 3, Katarina Schultz. I've already got into the cartel-controlled rehab issues and other issues regarding the quantity of fentanyl seized in Canada, the access to Canadian cartel operations in Canada without any substantiating evidence or corroborating evidence, and I think that this needs to be clear. There are other issues too, but I don't want to turn the initial email to Jeremy Carey into a witch hunt, so I'm keeping it kind of brief. Please confirm, correct, or provide the documentary basis, primarily to begin with the cartel-controlled rehab. We can start with that. Number 4, cartel rehabilitation story. I go back through the whole thing I've already explained here. Number 5, Pierre Rossini with Vince. I've already talked about that. Not only that, Pierre Rossini was locked up with Matthew Cox at Federal Correctional Institution Coleman in Florida, where the two got together and authored a book for Mr. Rossini. Mr. Rossini himself, having been in Mexico exactly on one occasion, per Matthew Cox in his book, and I've read the entire book twice, was in Mexico around Tijuana on New Year's Eve on one occasion. Then, in addition to that, was portrayed as a young, up-and-coming drug kingpin. And it's crazy that so much can be said, and I don't want to beleaguer the point or go too far out on a limb. I'm just going to say that I find it suspicious that the cartel would be tasking someone as young as Mr. Rossini was to be conducting hits on what turned out to be federal agents or informants for federal agents. And if I'm wrong in any of this, I would love to have it cleared up. I have tried to contact Pierre Rossini and other people on several occasions, and also, likewise, it's fallen on deaf ears. It's odd to me that when I asked Vincent about backing or vetting Pierre Rossini. I get that he was doing tech, and I don't know how someone's doing tech when they spent a quarter of the century almost in the federal prison system and then 6 years supervised release, whatever it is, who's been in Mexico exactly one time. Not my words, theirs, in that book. And, you know, I'd like a little bit more substantiation. Maybe you would too, before someone's presented as a cartel level expert. Or are they relaying stories that they've heard while they were locked up in a federal prison system? It's just, you know, questions. And then even the level of security they were locked up in. I haven't got that one down yet. Whether or not Pierre Rossini was in, what his security classification was, if he was locked up with people that were actually killing people for the cartel, which could be. Maybe he overheard some of it, maybe he couldn't. If he was in a minimum security place, which federal penitentiary or federal correctional institution, Coleman, you can look it up yourself, maybe they have different level yards, but that's where he's at with Matthew Cox. Matthew Cox and Johnny Mitchell doing their own true crime story now. Johnny Mitchell and other people. I have issues with some of the Sicario guests on his thing. Let's get through this email. Downstream harm. You know, on the call I brought up the point about whether or not people listening to people that aren't substantiated or are not proving their stories could potentially harm people in the future that have nothing to do with the drug war, which is why I do my channel. To be clear, I had been out of service for years without doing a YouTube channel, without putting my business on blast, and I did not start doing that until I started seeing Ed Calderon speaking to, not even Sean Ryan or Joe Rogan or Lex Fridman, but speaking to politicians, Dan Crenshaw in particular. And I wanted to make sure that if people are going to go to our politicians' ears, that they're doing it on a factual basis. So again, and I brought it up in several different areas, to Ed Calderon, to Vince Vargas, and to everybody attached to Ed Calderon, including everyone at Ironclad, Jeremy Carey being the CEO of which, with whom I spoke today. How did you vet any of Ed's stories? And obviously you're not going to answer that here. I am going to give you the right to reply. I'm going to send this email out today. It's going to be this evening in a few hours. I have to go get some coffee creamer and some groceries. And we're going to get to the bottom of this, because people telling you fairy tales, if that's what they turn out to be, should not be tolerated by any of us of any political affiliation or otherwise. To button this up, I'm putting in a response window. Please respond by the date that I'm going to put in here. Replies received by then will be incorporated in each item, re-verified. If no response is received, the record will state that only that none was received by that date. I'm not here to disparage anybody. I'm here to check a box. Yes or no. Did they respond? Yes. Did they respond? No. If they responded, what was it? Was it verified? Yes or no? Etc., etc., etc. So on and so forth. Nothing on these items will be published while the window is open. Meaning, I'm not going to go out and do an expose on anybody. I am publishing this initial video to let people know on my channel that do pay attention to what I do, because a lot of people do pay attention to it, even if they're not in the comments. Just given the amount of subscribers that I have, that going forward, this is the way that we're going to do things here at Fusil Automático Liquero. We are going to make sure that we have a process in place, Ishikawa diagrams, controlled revisions, and assigning everything a case number, right down to Fernando Puente in his initial videos being a DJ, all the way up until he gets referred to Danny Jones on the Concrete Podcast by Luis Chaparro. And we're going to go down every single detail with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that if we ever do enter a war on Mexican soil against cartels, that we do it on an educational and honest and open basis, and not by people telling campfire stories with nothing that's ever been substantiated. And that really needs to be the way that it needs to be done if you respect anybody involved in any of the above that we've talked about, whether it's Mexican children, Mexican adults, American children, American adults, Hector Borellis and the CIA and the DEA, and even the U.S. Marshal releasing CIA pilots with cocaine to inflict drug addiction and death on the citizens of this country all the way down the line. Hector Borellis will go on the channel with Vince Vargas, but they won't go on there with me. Which brings me back kind of to my point. All materials I hold on this matter are preserved and hashed at receipt. If Ironclad or its counsel prefers another channel, tell me and I will use it. Respectfully, Dave Frank, case ID, contact, etc. Let's just button this video up with this. You, the American consumer, and Canadian consumers, and even Mexican consumers, or consumers of YouTube in other countries, are being fed. Let's just get back right here.
Across the globe, especially with Europe and the cartel, and I'm excited.
Chechnya.
Excuse me. Chechnya.
They are the latest in a series of moves in the last year.
Chris Dalby, Katerina Schultz, I think it's Sam Cooke. I'll correct it in the text if it's not. All of these people are bringing us policy with someone that potentially works for the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, who is in charge of strategy and analysis. I believe that as of this filming that he's still there doing exactly that. In fact, I know he is because I was just on the phone with him a few days ago and he told me he was doing warrants. So look, not looking for a gotcha moment. I'm looking for people to start proving their sources, including Luis Chaparro when he's releasing CIA operative or agent names. And then the quantities of agents, is it 2 or is it 4? Is it just their first name? Is it first and last name? And everything going down. How Luis Chaparro and Fernando Puente got hooked up. Fernando Puente being born in LA, going to school in San Diego, but is presented. I kind of like him too, but when I'm even on his live feed, doesn't want to have anything to do with me. When I speak to other people that are attached to his podcast peripherally, don't want anything to do with me. So, the only way I have got people to want to have anything to do with me is by recording and capturing all of it. Well, this isn't it. Red Hat or RHC. Is by getting everything down to brass tacks to where people are held to their claims, held accountable for what they say in their own words, and where everything is given a hash number, where everything is archived, because if not, my basic experience thus far with the entire YouTube genre, whether they're CIA operatives in a government mouthpiece or people just out trying to make a living, has been largely met with silence and just derailed at every turn. So I started doing what I do at work with AS9100, aerospace and defense, and just the way that we are very meticulous in everything that we do. Those of you that fly aircraft around the country, or those of you that depend on weapons that we develop or have developed at other companies, which have nothing to do with my podcast, to be clear. That's where we're going with this. Unfortunately, I've had some legal training and stuff like that. I still rely on the services of a lawyer, but really what we're looking for is just honesty, openness, and clarity. So thank you again for tuning into my podcast. I'm not going to ask you to like and subscribe. If you want to support me, great. And if you don't, that's okay too. But this is what we're doing here in order to make sure that what they're doing there isn't fooling us in our own harms, in our own homes, and our own hearts. So I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to me. Have a great day.
Come on, boys!